It was a blazing Saturday morning, the kind where the air feels thick, and you can smell summer in every breath. My 9-year-old son, Jake, had been up since dawn, setting up his little lemonade stand at the corner of our cul-de-sac. He'd painted the sign himself, Ice Cold Lemonade 1, and proudly taped it to the front of the table we dragged from the garage. Our neighborhood was the kind of place that looked perfect in photos. Manicured lawns, white fences, smiling neighbors. But behind the smiles lurked something darker, the Homeowners Association. Ruled by Karen Monroe, our self-appointed queen. Karen had power issues, the kind that turned small problems into federal cases. Jake's lemonade stand was innocent fun. Neighbors walking their dogs stopped to buy a cup. And Jake's eyes lit up every time he earned $1. But then came the sound. The sharp click of Karen's high heels echoing down the sidewalk. She approached like a storm cloud, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with superiority. "Do you have a permit for this?" "Business operation?" Jake blinked. "A what?" Karen rolled her eyes. "You can't just set up a stand like this on HOA property without board approval. It violates Regulation 12B, Section 3. I stepped forward. "Karen, it's a lemonade stand. He's a kid, not Starbucks." She scoffed. "Rules are rules. If we start letting people run businesses on the street, this neighborhood will look like a flea market." Before I could reply, she reached for Jake's table and knocked over the pitcher of lemonade. It crashed to the pavement, juice splattering across the sidewalk. Jake's eyes welled up. "Hey, that was mine!" Karen crossed her arms. "Consider this a warning. Next time there'll be a fine." Then she turned and walked off, heels clicking like gunfire. Jake looked up at me, trembling. "Dad, she broke it." My blood boiled. I wanted to yell, to chase her down. But I didn't. Instead, I knelt beside Jake and said, "It's okay, buddy. We'll clean this up, and we'll make it right." But inside I was seething. No one humiliates my kid and gets away with it. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to take back control. And the next time Karen tried to flex her power, it would be me sitting at the top of the HOA. For the next few days, I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head, the sound of the pitcher breaking, Jake's hurt face, Karen's smug little smirk. Every time I walked past that patch of sidewalk, I saw the faint yellow stain from the spilled lemonade and felt my jaw tighten all over again. I tried to let it go. I really did. My wife told me to just file a complaint and move on. But complaints in our HOA went straight to Karen, and everyone knew how that would end. She controlled everything, the board meetings, the budget, even the landscapers. She had turned what was supposed to be a friendly neighborhood association into her own mini-kingdom. But something shifted the following week. Jake came home from school, holding a crumpled flyer in his hand. "Dad, Mrs. Monroe put this in everyone's mailbox," he said, voice trembling. The flyer said, "Unauthorized commercial activity is strictly prohibited. Any further violations will result in fines and potential eviction proceedings." She had posted Jake's lemonade stand as an example, with a picture she must have taken while she was yelling at him. Seeing my son's photo labeled as a violator lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. That night, I sat down with my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I started reading through the HOA bylaws, 42 pages of pure legal gibberish. But somewhere between the fine print and the ridiculous landscaping rules, I found gold. Karen didn't actually own the HOA. It was an elected board. And membership came with shares, literal shares of the community's controlling interest. The more shares you owned, the more power you had. And guess what? Homeowners who moved away sometimes sold their shares, privately to avoid the transfer hassle. That's when it hit me. If I bought enough of those shares, I could become the majority stakeholder. And once I did, Karen would answer to me. Over the next month, I quietly contacted former residents and property owners. A few were all too happy to sell their old shares for a few $100. Others didn't even know they still had them. By the time Karen realized what was happening, I owned 61% of the HOA's controlling interest. When I walked into the next board meeting, the look on her face was priceless. She had no idea what was coming, and not yet. I smiled and said, "Karen, I think we need to discuss some leadership changes." Her pen froze midair. "Excuse me?" "Oh, you heard me. I leaned back. Starting with your position. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Word had spread that something big was about to go down. Neighbors who'd been too afraid to speak up before now filled the community hall, whispering in the back rows. Karen sat at the head of the table, as usual flipping through her notes with the confidence of a dictator, about to give another speech. She didn't know that this time the ground under her throne was about to collapse. When the meeting began, she launched into her usual routine. Complaints about lawns being half an inch too high, trash bins visible for 5 minutes too long, and of course, unauthorized activities by certain residents. I waited until she paused for breath and stood up. Karen, I said calmly, before we continue, I'd like to bring up a matter of ownership. She frowned. Ownership? I pulled a folder from my briefcase and spread out the documents across the table. As of last week, I'm the majority shareholder in this HOA, which means I'm calling for an emergency vote. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face went pale. You can't just, that's not how this works. I smiled. Actually, that's exactly how it works. Section 7C of the bylaws. A majority stakeholder can call for leadership restructuring. The audience erupted in murmurs. A few people clapped. For the first time, Karen's perfect composure cracked. You think you can take this from me? She hissed, standing up. I built this community. I kept it clean, organized, and miserable, I interrupted. You fined people for planting the wrong flowers. You yelled at kids for playing outside. You destroyed my son's lemonade stand. That last part made the crowd gasp. Everyone remembered the photos she'd mailed around. Karen's voice rose. That stand was against regulations. It was a 9-year-old summer project, I said firmly. You humiliated him for no reason. And now you're done here. I called for a vote. Out of the 9 board members, 7 raised their hands in agreement. Karen's jaw dropped. She looked around the room desperate, but no one spoke for her. It's over, I said quietly. You're removed as president, effective immediately. Karen's chair screeched as she stood. This isn't over, she spat. You'll regret this. But as she stormed out of the room, the crowd erupted into applause. Jake, sitting in the back row, was grinning from ear to ear. That moment, seeing my son smile again, was worth every dollar, every sleepless night, and every ounce of patience it took to bring her down. But I wasn't finished yet. Because now that I owned the HOA, I had plans to rebuild it, and to make sure no Karen ever ruled it again. A week after Karen's dramatic exit, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. For the first time in years, people smiled when they walked their dogs. Kids played basketball in driveways without looking over their shoulders. You could even see lawn chairs popping up on front porches again. Something Karen had once banned for being visually cluttered. I'd officially been voted in as HOA president, though I preferred the term neighbor in charge. My first act was to call a community meeting, but not in the stuffy clubhouse where Karen used to rule. I held it right in the cul-de-sac, the same place where Jake's lemonade stand once stood. This time the stand was back, brighter, sturdier, and proudly labeled. Jake's Free Lemonade, sponsored by your new HOA. When people arrived, Jake was handing out drinks with the biggest smile on his face. The neighbors laughed, hugged, and talked freely, something that hadn't happened here in years. I took a deep breath, stepped up on the curb, and began to speak. Everyone, I said, we've spent too long being afraid of fines, warnings, and ridiculous rules. This neighborhood belongs to all of us, not one person with a clipboard. There was a cheer from the crowd. So from now on, I continued, the HOA isn't about control. It's about community. No more fines for kids playing outside. No more threats over paint colors. And definitely, I added with a grin, no more tearing down lemonade stands. The applause that followed was loud enough to echo down the street. Even the elderly couple from the corner house, who'd been afraid to speak up under Karen, were clapping. Then, as if fate had a sense of humor, a silver SUV slowed at the end of the street. Behind the wheel was Karen. She stared at the crowd, disbelief written all over her face. Jake raised his cup of lemonade high in the air and shouted, "Want some, Ms. Monroe? It's free!" The crowd burst into laughter. Karen's car sped off without a word. I wrapped my arm around Jake's shoulders and looked around at our neighborhood. Truly our neighborhood now. The sun was setting, turning everything gold. This, I told him, is what happens when you stand up for what's right. Jake smiled. Does that mean I can open another stand tomorrow? I laughed. Buddy, you can open 10. You practically own the street now. As we watched the neighbors mingle and sip lemonade under the fading light, I realized something. Revenge had felt good. Sure, but rebuilding something better felt even sweeter. And that day, with every sip of Jake's lemonade, the whole community got a taste of freedom.